Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the live chat. We are live. We are rocking. Hello, everyone. It is so good to see you. We got a big show today. We have got a lot to talk about, a ton to talk about. So I'm really excited. We will have no shortage of topics to get to today. Couple housekeeping notes right off the top. I really quick want to say thank you, everyone. The YouTube channel, it's a random milestone, but it's a cool milestone. The YouTube channel just passed last night 1 million minutes of total view time. That's kind of crazy to me. You know, I'm still small over here on YouTube, but 1 million minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. That's a lot of time of people watching and discussing the video game industry with me. So thank you so much, everyone, for 1 million minutes watched over here on YouTube. Pretty good considering the channel was just created in 2019. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for everyone that came out to the live stream last night for the Game Awards, the companion stream. We had a bunch of fun. That's up here if you want to go back and watch it. If you didn't watch it live with us, it's long. It is like 3.5 hours. So I totally get if you don't want to rewatch the whole thing, but it is up there. And I wanted to give a shout out and say thanks to everyone that watched it live with me. Okay, so what can we talk about today? What are these big topics that I said we can get to? There is a bunch. So first of all, November NPD sales results are out for the US market. So we have some interesting info on how the Nintendo Switch sold, on how PlayStation 5 sold, on how Xbox Series X and S sold, as well as a ton of games, right? It's November, so we've got the big game launches. We've got Call of Duty in there. We got Assassin's Creed. We got Spider-Man Miles Morales. We also have, of course, a bunch of info about Cyberpunk 2077. It clearly has had a ginormous launch. In fact, maybe the biggest ever in video games. If it's not the biggest, it's going to be probably in the top 3 or 5. Probably top 3 or 5 biggest launches ever, but it might actually be number 1. So we can talk about that. However, it is being met very mixed online in regards to glitches, in regards to the game not living up to expectations for some people. So we can talk about what that's going to mean long term. Microsoft dropped some more info in terms of metrics. We had the Game Awards last night. Like I said, there is a bunch. So start dropping those questions down into chat. Now, the way this works, if this is your first time ever being a part of the live chat, I basically just answer and break down as many questions as possible. There's 2 ways to do that. First of all, you can just drop a free question, right? You just type it into chat, you drop it, and I get to it. The other way, though, to guarantee that I answer your question is going to be that super chat option. Typically, during these chats, I cannot hit all free questions because we usually get a lot of questions in chat. So if you want to make sure 100% that you get your question answered, this super chat option is there and available. But I will hit as many free questions as possible. So it just depends on how many we get on whether I can get to free ones or super chats. But those are your 2 options. Like I said, don't feel obligated to donate in Super Chat, but it will guarantee you that I get your question. Now, really quick, before I start diving into questions, I do want to give you the NPD results, right? So we have some context around what exactly the results are before we start going deep into questions. One thing first, it was a record-breaking November for the industry. Over $7 billion. It was insane. Gigantic November, really across the board. Some crazy, crazy stuff came in. So here is your top 10 games for the month. Or actually, I might do top 20 really quick since it's November. I'll go through these quick. Number 1, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Not too surprising. Gigantic launch, of course. Call of Duty continues to be an absolute beast. Assassin's Creed Valhalla at number 2. Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales at number 3. Huge launches for all 3 of those. Madden 21 at number 4. NBA 2K21 at number 5. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity at number 6. That's a very good result, especially because it does not include digital for Nintendo, because Nintendo doesn't give digital info for their games to NPD. And keep in mind, this isn't a traditional Zelda, right? This is more of a spin-off, and it's more of like a Musou Dynasty Warriors type thing. So it's not the same thing as a normal Zelda game. So being number 6 in November, that's a great result in my opinion. Number 7, we got Watch Dogs Legion. Number 8, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Number 9, FIFA 21. Number 10, Demon's Souls debuts at number 10. So it did make the top 10. Pretty cool to see that. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, number 11. Super Mario 3D All-Stars, number 12. Just Dance 2021 at number 13. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe at 14, Luigi's Mansion 3 at 15, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit at 16, Smash at 17, Marvel's Avengers at 18, Mortal Kombat 11, number 19, and then rounding out your top 20 is Ghost of Tsushima. So pretty good results there across the board. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, interestingly, we know it was the biggest launch worldwide ever for an Assassin's Creed game. It looks like in the wording here it might be the second biggest in the US, because Matt Piscatella, the way he phrased it was Assassin's Creed Valhalla achieved the highest launch month sales for an Assassin's Creed title since Assassin's Creed 3 in 2012. So that wording makes me think it's the second biggest Assassin's Creed launch in the US, but worldwide at least, we know it's the biggest ever. Miles Morales did really good. It was the second biggest superhero launch ever on PlayStation, only behind Spider-Man 2018. So an amazing result there. It beat Avengers, at least in terms of debut on PlayStation. And then in terms of hardware, really quick, and then we're going to get to questions, everyone. Switch was the best-selling platform at over 1.3 million. That's not me leaking data. That basically all came out last night, I think was when it all came out. 1.3 plus million for Switch. We can talk about that, kind of surprisingly low. So we can talk about that. 1.3 million is still a lot, right? Switch has set a record for 24 consecutive months, but I don't know that anyone predicted it as low as 1.3. Or if so, it was just very few people, right? Almost all of us were expecting higher. In fact, I was conservative compared to some people. I saw a lot of predictions for over 2 million in November, and I said on the last chat I didn't think it would do 2 million, and it did even lower than what I thought. So that is an interesting thing we could talk about. I went on the conservative end, and even I overvalued Switch a little bit there in November. So we can talk about that. Pretty interesting there. PlayStation 5 had an amazing launch. It was the highest debut ever for a console in the US. It wasn't enough to pass the Switch, but it was like for the month, but it was the biggest launch ever for a new console. So, I mean, that's great, right? Amazing debut there for PS5. And then interestingly, Xbox Series X and S appears to have sold less than Xbox One at launch in the US. So that's going to round out your news there, your NPD stuff. Start dropping your questions down into chat about NPD now that you have that context. All right, everyone? First super chat here right off the bat for Timmer72299. Thank you so much, Timmer. Thank you for always being in the chats. Thank you for pretty much always dropping super chats. It's amazing of you. Hi, Benji. Which market do you think will be the biggest for Diablo 4? China, Europe, North America, or question mark? This is an interesting question because Diablo is one of those games that is huge everywhere, right? Blizzard in particular is very strong in Asia, right? You see a lot of Western companies not necessarily find a ton of success in Asia, right? There are some, there's no doubt about it, but Blizzard is one of the very few Western countries that's huge in Korea. It does very well in China, right? If you look at World of Warcraft, if you look at games like Overwatch, if you look at Diablo. So that is a very interesting thing there is, you know, a lot of companies don't really have a huge presence in Asia that are from the West, but Blizzard does. Blizzard is a powerhouse in Asia. So I could actually, Timmer, see China being its biggest market. That is potentially possible. I would say unlikely to be North America, personally, in my opinion. I'm going to say probably either China or Europe. I think one of those probably will be Diablo's biggest. North America is a huge market, right? In terms of like countries, it's basically like individual countries. It's just about basically number one for video game sales, like by and large. But China is huge for video games too, right? I'm talking about like console and PC. I'm not necessarily talking about mobile. But I think China or Europe. I don't think North America will be Diablo's biggest, but it could be China. That is 100% possible because Blizzard, like I said, they are very big in Asia. JCat with a super chat. Thank you so much, JCat. Thanks for being in chat. Thanks for stopping by last night during the Game Awards. I'd like to repeat my question from last night. Are Switch November results disappointing in your opinion? Down 5% year over year. JCat, I'm going to kind of say yes. Now, I kind of just went into this a minute ago, right? Anyone that was a part of my last live chat, I had predicted, you never know how predictions are going to go for video game sales. I'm actually usually considered one of the more reliable-ish people for video game sales, like predictions. I'm not going to say I'm the best in the world at it. There's some people that are truly amazing, but I'm like pretty solid at doing video game predictions. But I did warn people, I cautioned them in my last chat, it's going to be tough right now, even for someone like me, to accurately predict how video game sales are going to go, because we have brand new consoles on the market. Allocations are going to be all different across retailers than normal. We're going to be dealing with extreme shortages, which is going to make it more difficult to predict who's selling what. We have Sony and Microsoft selling from their own storefronts, probably more than they typically would, right? Normally PS5s and Xboxes, the vast bulk of sales are coming strictly from retailers, not so much their own storefronts. But with these extreme shortages, you're seeing a lot of consoles probably being sold through the Microsoft store, probably being sold through PlayStation's own websites. So all of this is going to make NPD very difficult to predict, I would say, for probably the next 6 months. I think that things are going to be a little bit difficult to predict until we're in a situation where, really retailers are regularly stocked, right? It's one of those things. There's not constant shortages. There's not constant, as soon as a console gets to stores, it's gone. I think in about 6 months, once we hit late spring, summer, it's going to be back to being fairly, I'm not going to say easy, but consistent on making video game sales predictions. But JCat, I had said in the last chat that I thought Switch wasn't going to hit 2 million. And I saw some people say that they thought I was being too conservative on that. Turns out even my prediction, I said, I think you might be able to get up into that like 1.7 million territory. Even I was optimistic, and I saw a ton of predictions at 2 million or close to 2 million. So even my conservative estimate was still higher than many people's. JCat, I would say it is a bit disappointing being down year over year. We've seen the Switch really be up year over year and doing completely amazing since really the very beginning of this year. Now, 1.3 million is still a huge number, right? That's still a lot of consoles to sell in only 1 month. But what this means to me is they just simply did not have enough inventory to go higher than that. Because like I've been telling people for a while, November and December results for all these consoles, whether it's Switch, whether it's Xbox, whether it's PlayStation, every one of these, it is strictly going to be how many consoles can you get to stores, because everything is selling out. Everything, whether that's Switch, whether that's PS5, whether that's Xbox Series X and S, or even the last gen systems, Xbox Ones and PS4s. There's not a lot of those being manufactured, the last gen consoles, but even those are selling out. Literally, JCat, every single console for November and December in particularly, that number you're going to see on NPD, that's basically going to be how many units they got into stores. So 1.3 million is disappointing, I would say. It's even, like I said, lower than my conservative quote estimate. But yeah, I wouldn't panic about it yet. Let's see what December looks like. JCat, I would say if December is also lower than expected, we might start wondering if maybe production's just not near what it needs to be, right? Because I'm telling you, there's not Switches just sitting on shelves. It's not one of those situations where the Switch sold 1.3 million because no one's, when I say no one, I mean not a higher than last year number of people want to buy it. There is a ton of people that want to, but you can only buy what's in stores. So if December's also disappointing, then I would say Nintendo really needs to up manufacturing, because they could have had an even bigger holiday than what we're seeing. Thank you for the super chat, JCat. Kellegram with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Kellegram. Sup, Benji? What is up? Do you see the reduced inventory of next-gen consoles affecting software sales? Ooh, this is interesting. Q1 of 2021? Or did they do well enough at launch to be fine? Kellegrim, for next-gen only games, yes, this will 100% impact their sales, 100%. Because the reality is like I said, everything's selling out. But even with everything selling out, you're still only looking at a few million consoles, right? So even if your game has an amazing attach rate, let's say you go as high as a crazy 50% attach rate, which let me tell you, 50% is insane. Even if you hit those kinds of numbers, your game's still only doing a few million units, right? Now that's going to change by the time we hit like next holiday because there's going to be way more next gen consoles out there. But yes, Kellegrim, like Q1, Q2, these ranges, yes, the amount of consoles out there will limit next gen only games. Now, that's the main reason why you're seeing so many cross-gen projects, right? That's a reason why Miles Morales was also on PS4. There's a reason why Horizon Forbidden West is also going to be on PS4. It's because Sony and, Microsoft, even with many of their games, they're fully aware, and third parties, like, no matter what, even selling out of everything, you're still going to have, let's be optimistic and say Sony can ship 10 million units of PS4 by March of next year, the end of their fiscal year. I mean, that's still only 10 million consoles. And like I said, a 50% attach rate is mind-blowing. Most games aren't going to hit anywhere near that. So you are limited in how many games you can sell until that install base gets way bigger. So that's kind of why Kellegrim, the first year, you're not going to see a ton of next-gen only games. There will definitely be some. Ratchet and Clank, we know on the way, is next-gen only. Demon's Souls that just came out is next-gen only. So there is going to be some games like that. But yes, the vast majority of games for those first 12 months will be, cross-gen. You're going to see a last-gen version and you're going to see a next-gen version. I suspect, Kellegrim, by the time we hit 2022, that's going to be fairly rare. There's going to be some cross-gen stuff even into 2022, sports games in particular, right? There's no way Madden and FIFA and all that are just going to abandon last gen. Even in 2022, I suspect you're going to see cross-gen. But I think by the time we hit that, it's going to be the vast majority of games are only on next gen. I'm not talking about stuff like with Switch, right? We're talking about like the big PlayStation and Xbox games. Yeah, I think 2022 is the year where you see very, very few cross-gen. Probably mostly next-gen only at that point. All right. Killian Butler with the super chat. Thank you so much, Killian, with the 5. Hey, Benji, hope you're good. I'm doing great. Honestly, Killian, I'm doing very good. Thank you so much. Do you think in 2021, PS5 will break the monthly hardware records the Switch has been setting this year? Killian, it's all about production, right? Like I've been saying, I know it sounds a bit like just repeat here, but it really is true that it's all about how much you can make. So the demand is insane, right? We clearly see the demand is astronomical for PS5. In terms of the monthly records, that's going to be tough because Switch has set some pretty high bars this year. Here's what I will say. I fully expect, Killian, in 2021, you will see PS5 start outselling Switch some months. Yes. So the Switch has been the best-selling console for 24 consecutive months. It is a record, right? 2 straight years, nothing has outsold the Switch. How crazy is that? To put that into context, I mean, that's mind-blowing. It's literally the longest streak ever in the video game industry in the US. 2 straight years of dominance by Switch. So I think that does get broken, yes, next year. Next year, there are going to be some months, I think, that you're definitely going to see PS5 start outpacing the Switch. So I do think that streak will get broken next year. I have no idea what month, right? It's all going to come down to production capacity like we keep talking about. But yes, I suspect there's going to be like Horizon month, right? When that game comes out, that's going to be huge. If they have enough consoles, because a lot of people, I'm sure, are going to go out and buy PS5s along with Horizon Forbidden West. So that month for sure, I would expect right now PS5 to outsell Switch as long as there's enough consoles there. So we're definitely going to see that streak broken, Killian. But the individual months, Some of the numbers Switch put up this year, that might be a little tougher because Switch had some monster months in 2020. Johnny Pattons with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Johnny. As far as this narrative of Xbox One selling more than Series X at launch, I think we need to keep in perspective that Xbox One had momentum from 360. That is a great point, Johnny. And the other point that we really need to focus on, so I've seen a lot of people kind of like melting down about these Xbox numbers, right? You're seeing Xbox fans kind of freak out and be like, oh my God, what's happening? The sky is falling. And then you're also seeing some PlayStation fans almost, doing a bit of a celebration saying, oh, look, Xbox is in trouble. No, I can tell you there literally is zero Xbox Series X and S on shelves in the US. And if they are on shelves, they're gone like in 5 minutes. So basically what this proves, because we know Xbox Series X and S had a globally bigger launch than Xbox One. What this means is simply in terms of distributing those consoles, Microsoft launched in more markets this time around, so they were not able to provide enough units for the US to outpace the Xbox One launch. I will say it still surprised me. I still thought Xbox Series X and S would launch bigger than Xbox One, but clearly it looks like that has not happened. But I would not panic about, oh, the sky is falling and Xbox is doomed. Not by any means. Now, is it going to outsell the PS5 globally? No. It's just not going to happen. We're seeing that all over the world in markets, right? There's sellouts everywhere, but I just cannot see a scenario where global sales for Xbox are higher than PlayStation. But it is not by any means one of those scenarios where the sky is falling and Xbox is doomed. Here's what I'll say, Johnny. If we hit springtime and Xbox Series X and S are selling less than Xbox One did in its first spring, I would actually start to panic. Yes, because the Xbox One had a terrible spring. Very, very bad. Xbox One had a huge launch. Like, it did actually very, very well. People forget that the Xbox One launched bigger than the Xbox 360 did. It had a bigger launch. The problem for Xbox One is as soon as it hit springtime, the Xbox One fell off a cliff in sales. So if Series X and S are selling worse than Xbox One did in spring, that's when people need to start worrying. But for now, again, we're looking at straight up sellouts. So I wouldn't form a hardcore narrative until early next year. Benji with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. Hey, Benji, what CD Projekt Red should do from a PR standpoint to face the huge controversy around the PS4 and Xbox One versions of Cyberpunk 2077? Yes. This is disappointing. So what we've seen is that Cyberpunk 2077 clearly had a colossal launch. It might be the biggest launch ever in the history of video games. They had 8 million pre-orders. I have never seen a number that high. I am not sure if Grand Theft Auto 5 had more pre-orders than that because I did not have visibility to like the full pre-order data for Grand Theft Auto 5, and I don't think that was ever officially announced. But I can tell you, myself, I cannot recall ever a single game ever having 8 million pre-orders. I have never seen such a thing. 8 million pre-orders. That's not even sales. If they had 8 million sales, that would be crazy. It was 8 million pre-orders, and it hit 1 million concurrent on Steam. That is crazy, y'all, because this game also launched on GOG, which is CD Projekt Red's own site, right? So they sell a much bigger percentage. I'm not going to say it was bigger than Steam, but I'm saying your average game is not going to sell as much on GOG as what Cyberpunk's going to, because a lot of people that like CD Projekt Red, they're going to buy it through GOG to even more support CD Projekt Red. So clearly launch in terms of sales, in freaking sane. We might be looking at the biggest video game launch of all time. However, all that said, yes, there is controversy everywhere around this game. It clearly, from all reports, is buggy like crazy. When Assassin's Creed Valhalla came out, that game was pretty freaking buggy to the point that I actually waited to stop playing it. Now, the most recent patch fixed a lot. I will say it's not 100%. I'm playing through Valhalla right now. I'm at like 35 hours into the game, and I'm still experiencing some glitches. But I would say it's not necessarily like the end of the world right now, but at launch it was really rough. And I'm hearing that Cyberpunk is way glitchier even than Valhalla was. So I'm actually waiting. I own Cyberpunk, but I'm not going to play that until some more patches hit because it sounds like it is super buggy. That could 100% affect legs whenever it's that bad, right? A few bugs, it's kind of like whatever. You know, honestly, sometimes that stuff gets overblown on the internet compared to what your average consumer thinks. But if it's as buggy and broken as what people are saying it is, I mean, that is rough. That could have a serious impact. Also, there was the whole thing where they weren't allowing people to show their own footage for reviews. That was sketchy. Listen, everyone knows that I love CD Projekt Red. I am a massive fan of Witcher 2 and 3. I used to rock a Geralt avatar because I liked their games so much. But this is a bit of a PR nightmare. Yes, they need to get some patches out quick. They need to get some communication out there quick. They need to do a lot. Launch was huge, but I would say, Benji, that its legs are going to be a little interesting to watch to see how quickly that drops. You never know. Maybe it doesn't, right? Maybe it has a colossal second, third, fourth month. But right now, yeah, the PR is not good. The PR is not good. And especially, like you said, the console versions in particular seem to be way worse off in many ways than PC. So they've got some work to do, Benji. They definitely have some work to do. All right, super chats are cleared for now. Thank you so much for all those super chats, everyone. I'm going to start hitting some free questions. Chemis18 here with the first free question. The way CD Projekt Red handled the launch of Cyberpunk, reviews not being allowed to have captured gameplay, no console codes given, the amount of bugs is really disappointing to see. Any other publisher would get crucified. I agree with that, Chemis. I agree. And like I said, I like CD Projekt Red. I know a lot of people actually that work at that company. Whenever I say no, I just mean kind of like Twitter buddies, if you know what I mean. I have a bunch of people from CD Projekt Red that follow and interact with me. And I'm not trying to throw them, like the individual people, under the bus, right? Video games are a very difficult thing to do, especially launching during a pandemic. But I can't defend some of their stances here. Not allowing people to show their own capture code for a review is very sketchy. The way they didn't, show any console footage prior to launch, it was only PC, except for like very small snippets, right? Basically, like right before launch, we saw very small snippets on Xbox, but we didn't see, and it was like Xbox One X and stuff. We didn't see the base consoles, which is what most people own still, right? In terms of console gamers. Most people don't own a Series X or a PS5. They own a base PlayStation 4 and a base Xbox One. And there was like no footage of that prior to launch. So the main way most console gamers were going to play this game, they saw zero footage of it. So again, I'm not trying to blame individual people. I'm not trying to say CD Projekt Red is terrible, but I can't really defend some of the stuff they did here, right? I have to be honest. I just can't defend some of this. Some of this is, they needed to be a lot more transparent. Oh man, Timmer just dropped a huge super chat. Timmer with the 20. Thank you so much, Timmer. You are so freaking kind. Timmer, keep doing amazing work on Twitter. I love reading all of your posts about game budgets, about game sales. Keep doing it up. You're doing amazing work over there, Timmer. Thank you so much for the 20. That is incredibly kind, Timmer. Do you think we will see another celebrity successfully launch his own game studio? Ooh, this is fun. And not fail to do so like Kurt Schilling, Jerry Bruckheimer in the future, and release a AAA or quadruple A game to compete with big publishers? This is a great question, Timmer, because a lot of quote celebrities or Hollywood type people do play games. Like there's a lot. A lot of people don't realize that, right? They think that every time a celeb or a director or something shows up on a video game stream or interview that they must be faking it, right? The reality is a lot of people do play games in Hollywood, and especially I would say also like a lot of directors and stuff. Christopher Nolan we saw on the stream last night for the Game Awards, and I'm not saying heard like secretive stuff. I'm saying I've read things online that Christopher Nolan really respects games, that he's played a bunch of games, that he really likes them. There's a bunch of people that are like this in the industry. Because it's still entertainment, right? People that are making movies and directing movies and acting, they're doing entertainment, and gaming is another form of entertainment. So just like anybody else, a lot of these people are into it. Timmer, I do think you're going to see people try this. We just saw, and I was laughing at it because it was so ridiculous, but I'm not like bashing it. But whenever I saw Vin Diesel in Arc 2 last night, it was like crazy. It was like, whoa, this is Vin Diesel in Arc. Now, granted, it wasn't his own studio, right? He's appearing in a game. We're seeing, definitely one thing I would say, Timmer, is we are seeing way and way more Hollywood talent feel comfortable being in games, right? It used to be one of those things where if you were in a video game, it was almost kind of looked down upon. It was one of those things like, oh, you're not able to make it in movies, right? Oh, you're not able to make it in TV, so you must go and do those video games. We're seeing that change a lot. We're seeing a lot of actors start showing up in video games, big actors. I mean, we have Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk. We got Vin Diesel now here in Arc 2. You've got that game 12 Minutes, which is actually even an indie project that has people like Willem Dafoe in it. Like, we're seeing way and way more actors come over into the video game space. And yeah, I think you will see more celeb. I could see a Christopher Nolan studio, honestly. I know that sounds like out there, but I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him try and tackle something. We've seen Guillermo del Toro want to get involved into games more. Maybe he goes out there and tries to make his own game. Timmer, I think it'll happen. Yeah, I don't know who in particular, but I would say yes. Video games are too big to ignore, and there are a lot of people in Hollywood that really like video games. So I would say we're going to see someone, Timmer. Who that is, I'm not sure, but somebody. And thank you for that giant super chat. All right, back to free questions. Silence PP7. When do we get more Gotham Knights info? This is a great question. And what are you hoping to see from new gameplay? A populated Gotham could be a game-changing addition to a Batman game, so I'm anxious to see how that works. Silence PP7, my hype levels for Gotham Knights are really high. I know not everyone is, but I love comic books, whether it's Marvel, whether it's DC. I love comic book games. I love comic book movies. I love the comic books themselves. So I'm hyped for Gotham Knights. That is one I am excited for. I'm guessing we're going to see some new info on that in the springtime because that is scheduled to be a 2021 release. And my hunch is that's probably not a 2021 holiday game. Now, it could be. They didn't really give a date as far as I remember. They just said it's coming 2021. But if we look, Gotham Knight, I believe, came out, or not Gotham Knight, Arkham Knight came out in, I think it was June. It was like a summer month. I think that would be a good time frame for it. I would like to see that game come out sometime in the summer, maybe late summer, maybe like an August release I could totally see. So I'm guessing we're going to see more of that game probably in the spring because they're going to have to start showing and talking more if it really is releasing next year. And like you said, I agree 100%. A populated Gotham would be nice. Every single Arkham game, the city is like totally empty. There's like no one around. One of the cool things about the Spider-Man games is when you're swinging through New York, when you're exploring New York, there are pedestrians and people everywhere, right? They're all over the place. So that would be a fun addition to see a lot of people, like just bystanders in Gotham. And I'm really interested in it. I'd like to see more what they're going to do with the storyline, what villains they're going to bring in. So that's a few thoughts there. The Tarantino saying, doubtful you will see this. No, I see a Tarantino. But how are you and what console are you liking the most at the moment between PS5 or Xbox Series X? Also, first thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077. While I haven't played Cyberpunk yet, like I said, I own it, but I'm going to wait on some patches for Cyberpunk, considering how glitchy it sounds. I'm still working my way through Valhalla. I'm still working my way through other games. I bought a bunch of games at launch, so I've got stuff I can play anyways, and considering how rough Cyberpunk seems to be, I'm going to go ahead and wait on that a little bit. In terms of which console I'm liking more at the moment, I would say overall I'm leaning towards PS5 just because of all the exclusives at launch that the Xbox doesn't have as much. But I've been playing my Series X a lot this last week. I've been playing a lot of Valhalla. So like that was first like 2 weeks I was playing, I would say 90% PS5 and 10% on my Series X. That's kind of flipped right now. I'm playing a lot of my Series X because I'm playing Valhalla on it. They're both great. Game Pass is absolutely amazing for Xbox. This isn't just being kumbaya. Both systems really are awesome. I really love both of them. But if I would have only bought one, right, if I had to choose at launch, I probably would have went PS5. But the Series X is great too. Costas, Hi, Benji. Do you think Corey's new IP could pull a Cyberpunk and outsell God of War 2018? Also, which do you think will sell best, Horizon Zero Dawn 2 or Morales? So yeah, I think that that is what Corey's up to. That's my hunch, is that he does have a new IP. We talked about this in a stream a while back. I had hinted that I had reason to believe from some things I'd heard that that could be happening. Now, I have not heard for sure that 100% Corey Barlog's making a new IP. So don't run with that and say, Benji says he 100% is making a new IP. I'm not saying that at all. He could 100% not be. But a few things I have heard about Sony Santa Monica and what they're up to makes me think that that probably is going to happen. Now, I don't know when, right? I don't know. It depends on things with Ragnarok and stuff. But I think he is probably working towards a new IP. Do I think it could outsell God of War? That's a long shot. God of War Ragnarok is going to be huge, and God of War 2018 was also a beast. We would have to see the IP, Kostas. We'd have to see what he's coming up with, the concepts, what he wants to do, right? We literally have no idea about what that game would be. My hunch is it's going to be basically nothing like God of War, because if it's something at least somewhat in that ballpark, I'm not even saying like narrative, I'm saying gameplay, he could probably just put some of that stuff into God of War if he had some ideas around combat and stuff that was similar, if it's another hack and slash action game. So my hunch, Kostas, if he is doing a new IP, I think it's going to look radically different than God of War. I don't think it's going to be a melee combat type game at all, and I think the story is going to be way different. So that is a huge who knows there. We have no idea what he's got cooking and coming up with. So I would right now rank it as unlikely that it would outsell God of War on its first iteration. Maybe a sequel would, but not impossible. You never know. Like you said, Cyberpunk's going to outsell The Witcher, so it could happen. Ken B. New Hyrule Warriors seems to be a pretty good launch. Yes, I agree, Ken. Very good. Number 6, not counting digital. Any prediction how legs will be compared to other Switch games? So, Ken, some of the early stuff I'm seeing in December, it's looking like legs are going to be pretty good. I don't know, Ken, that I would consider Hyrule Warriors is going to have the legs of Animal Crossing and Mario Kart and games like this, or even Breath of the Wild, right? Switch's evergreens are mind-blowing. The legs on these games are truly insane. I don't know that we're going to see Hyrule Warriors do those kinds of long-term numbers, but we've also seen a lot of these, games in the genre, for example, like Dynasty Warriors, like be extraordinarily front-loaded, especially in the West. I don't think Hyrule Warriors will be that. Age of Calamity, I don't think it's going to be that front-loaded. I think it's going to have a good December result as well. And yeah, number 6, not counting digital, is fantastic launch for it. So, Ken, clearly that game was a very big success for Nintendo. It's also not going to have the budget of, let's say, Breath of the Wild 2, right? I'm sure it wasn't cheap to make, but it's also not going to have that crazy budget that some of the Zelda games have. I think it was rumored that the first Breath of the Wild cost $100 million. I think that was the reported rumored figure. So I don't think Age of Calamity is a $100 million game. But, yeah, it's definitely doing very well, Ken. Very well. Elias Stapleton here. Some predicted Hades will win a lot of awards in the Game Awards. Some others that The Last of Us will win Game of the Year, and maybe others. But at the end, The Last of Us won almost everything. Yeah, they dominated last night. Do you think Naughty Dog is in the top studio for Sony? Final question, 2 Game of the Years in 3 years for Sony, and maybe in 2021 with God of War 2 and Horizon Zero Dawn 2, maybe is another Game of the Year coming. Since Herman started his role, it seems like a lot of first-party studios are doubling their game output. Yeah. So, yeah, the Last of Us dominated last night. Way more than I expected. Now, I thought that they were definitely going to win a lot of awards because they were the most nominated game, right? They had 10 nominations, so you had to assume they were going to win a lot. But they won 7 out of those 10. They completely dominated at the Game Awards. Definitely, I would say if you went to Sony themselves, right? If you went to Herman Hulst, if you went to Jim Ryan, and you were to ask them privately, because I'm sure they might not want to reveal this, publicly. But I'm sure they would say that they probably consider Naughty Dog their premier and most important studio. Yes, I would say so. First of all, The Last of Us Part 2 had the biggest launch ever for a Sony studio. So in terms of financials, you know that they're very important. And we also saw Uncharted 4 do absolutely incredible this generation. And we saw The Last of Us Part 1 do incredible, right? So clearly Naughty Dog is, in terms of sales, a beast. The other thing is that Naughty Dog gets insane prestige. So not only do you have a studio that's going to sell really well, but you also have a studio that's making games that critics adore. So yeah, I would say, Elias, Naughty Dog is the most important Sony first-party studio. 100%. I actually don't even think there's a debate. I think Naughty Dog 100% is their premier studio. Now, they have a lot of good teams and a lot that are building that direction, right? Insomniac is definitely building towards that direction when you see the Spider-Man games. You now have Ghost of Tsushima, a giant success for Sucker Punch. We know that Guerrilla Games and Sony Santa Monica are also very prestigious, very important studios. So we have teams that are definitely moving that direction, but they're still not at that Naughty Dog level in terms of combining sales and prestige. They're still your premier team over there. And then the final question here about them possibly winning 3 out of 4 years for the Game Awards. It's definitely possible, Elias. We need to see these games first, but you definitely have to think, unless something goes astronomically wrong, that the next God of War and the next Horizon will be nominated, because both of those games, prior games, were nominees, and God of War won Game of the Year. So yeah, unless those sequels massively disappoint, both of those should be in the running. So it's possible, Elias. Those games will be in play. There's some big wild cards. Is Breath of the Wild 2 going to come next year, right? We did not see it at the Game Awards, but I still think it is. So you got to think again, unless the Breath of the Wild sequel is an astronomical disappointment, that's in there. So there's going to be some competition, but Elias, definitely Sony's going to be in the running, you would think. Sounds PP7. Why don't fighting games like Mortal Kombat branch out into non-fighters anymore, like with Shaolin Monks? When the IP is a lot more popular today, a third-person Scorpion game seems like it would be a big sell. That's actually an interesting question, Silence. Here's the thing. A lot of fighting games aren't very big, honestly. Like Smash is gigantic. Mortal Kombat is gigantic. Injustice is very big. But the fighting genre in general, it's more a couple games really carrying things. Street Fighter has recovered from when Street Fighter V launched. If you remember, when Street Fighter V first came out, it was seen as a big sales disappointment, like big time. Did not meet expectations and also had terrible early legs. But it has bounced back and recovered. So, Silence, I think it's one of those scenarios where the fighting genre overall, there's not a lot of games that are going to be able to sell well. But Mortal Kombat in particular, Silence, that's interesting. I do agree. I think a third-person Scorpion game or Sub-Zero or something like that could be successful, because the Mortal Kombat brand in particular is gigantic. So yeah, that would be one that's a definite contender. Javier Macias Leon. Hello, Benji. So another event without Elden Ring. I know, right? Jeez. What were your favorite announces? I really liked Monster Hunter Rise, Returnal, and Perfect Dark. What do you think are the sales potential for these 3? So yeah, Elden Ring. Wow. That game has not been seen now for a year and a half. That is a long time, y'all. That is a long time to not show a game. The reasons behind that, I have no idea. I think there's a rumor floating around out there from Dusk Golem, who is reliable. And I think Dusk Golem said that the game was just announced way too early. Like, whenever they announced Elden Ring, they had barely started production on it. So if that's true, that makes sense. Because for a lot of games, you're going to need at least a year or 2 of production before you show something, right? Because those early years, especially on a new IP, are very conceptual, right? A lot of stuff starts coming together in that final year or so of development. So if that's true, that they basically announced Elden Ring right when they started developing the game, that makes sense when we've barely seen anything, because they just announced it flat out too early. If that is true, if they didn't have already like a year or so of development under their belts when they announced that, they should have waited. I think that was way too premature. But hopefully we see something soon, because a year and a half is a very long time. If we go 2 years without seeing anything from Elden Ring, wow, that is crazy. That's pretty rare. It's not 100% unheard of, but 2 years with nothing is rare. There's not often you see that in the gaming industry. A year isn't super uncommon, but 2 is crazy. 2 full years is crazy. So hopefully, Javier, we see something in the spring or something. Fingers crossed. My favorite announcements were definitely Mass Effect. I love that it is a direct sequel to 3. Like, it looks like it's picking up almost right after 3. Some of the hints, I won't spoil it for people that didn't play the original trilogy, since that's about to come out. So actually, a lot of people might be playing the Mass Effect trilogy for the first time here next spring. So I won't drop spoilers, but there are things in the trailer that lead you to believe that this next Mass Effect game is taking up very soon after 3. Not long, y'all. Not long. I think probably at most the gap might be a few years. It's not going to be one of those things, it doesn't look like at least, that, oh, there's a 100-year, 50-year time jump or something like that. Because this is a futuristic game, so you can jump as far as you want. It looks like this is very, very soon after 3. So I actually like that. That makes me very, very happy. So that was one. The game from Glenn Schofield, I cannot remember the name of it. Is it the Calypso something? I lost my mind. Anyone that goes back and watches my reaction last night, I lost my mind when Glenn started talking and explaining what that was. I love Dead Space. Literally, I am obsessed with Dead Space. I think that the first 2 games are some of the greatest horror games ever made. And Glenn was speaking to me. So anyone that doesn't know, Glenn Schofield is one of the creators of Dead Space. And he said that this game is space, horror, third person, single player. It is essentially the spiritual successor to Dead Space. So I lost my mind at that announcement. I was hyped. Loved that. I thought the Sephiroth reveal for Smash was amazing. I thought that trailer was pure hype, so that was good. Dragon Age continues to look good, and Perfect Dark looks amazing. I mean, it's a concept, right? So it's CG. It's a conceptual trailer, but when I say it looks amazing, I don't mean gameplay. I think the concept is there. I'm someone that's not attached to the Perfect Dark franchise. Like, I don't love that franchise. In fact, I haven't even played the Perfect Dark games. And I thought that the concept sounded very cool. Eco-terrorism, doing a first-person spy game with a lot of movement and momentum. I love the Mirror's Edge games, for example. It sounds like they might be incorporating some of that first-person movement and spy stuff. And very cool, yeah. Very excited for that. In terms of the sales potentials, Monster Hunter Rise is going to be gargantuan in Japan. I mean gargantuan. The tracking over there looks crazy. I think people are saying it's tracking higher than Monster Hunter World did in Japan. So huge over there. Returnal, I would say my expectations are a moderate success. So I'm not expecting Returnal to be this like the next God of War in sales, or, you know, some of these crazy numbers we're seeing out of the Sony published games. I'd be very shocked if Returnal does those kinds of crazy numbers, because it is from all reporting, it looks like it is somewhat of a roguelite style type game where, you know, you die and you restart and you die and you restart, and you do advance through the game, but those typically, that style game isn't going to be the giant sellers to the degrees of the God of Wars and Spider-Mans and things like this. So not expecting anything like that, but I'd say a moderate success for Returnal. And Perfect Dark has potential to be huge. Potential. We'll have to see what that game looks like more. But first-person games are very big sellers. Action games are very big sellers. The fact it's probably going to get a huge amount of marketing from Microsoft and stuff. I'd say Perfect Dark has big potential, but we need to see it, right? The Initiative is a brand new studio, so who knows what the quality will be like. But the potential is there. And then Javier is also asking, with 8 million copies and just pre-orders, why are CD Projekt Red's shares so down? I really don't understand the market. Javier, I think it's because a lot of investors think that that game is going to fall off hard. And I am also inclined to think that that is potentially possible. So I think a lot of investors, yes, the early numbers look amazing, but I think a lot of investors are saying how mixed the reaction is online and how angry actually a lot of people are at this game. And I think some investors are very worried that this game could fall off very quickly. So I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing, because honestly, a lot of the feedback online is pretty negative. We just had 2 super chats drop at once. Thank you so much. Let me hit those super chats. Killian Butler with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much. The Mass Effect lead dev has hinted on Twitter that the new game is a sequel to Mass Effect 3 and Andromeda somehow. Yes, this is interesting, Killian. If you notice, the very first shot of that trailer shows both the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. They said that that was intentional. Here's the thing we know. Andromeda is a giant time jump after Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect 4 does not appear to be. So my hunch, Killian, is that what they're going to do here, and this is not spoilers, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything, because I know, like I said, probably a lot of people are going to play Mass Effect for the first time when the Legendary Edition comes out. I've had people commenting on my posts about it saying that, saying, yep, I can't wait to experience Mass Effect for the first time. So I'm not going to spoil it, but Andromeda did a big time jump. It was also in a completely different galaxy. My hunch, Killian, is the way they're going to tie Andromeda in is they're probably going to mention what's going on with Andromeda. If you take what I'm saying, the very beginning of Andromeda, the concept around what happened with Andromeda, they're probably going to mention that. They're probably going to keep Andromeda as a canon game, right? They're probably not going to write it off as an, oh, that never happened. They're probably going to keep it as part of the universe in case they ever do want to explore those concepts more. But obviously, I think the main focus is going to be following up directly the events of Mass Effect 3. The vast bulk of this trailer was a lot of winks and nods saying, hey, remember how Mass Effect 3 ended? We're coming in right after that. Like I said, it looks like it is not a big time jump. So that's my hunch, Killian. They're going to acknowledge Andromeda. They're going to keep that as part of the canon story of the game. But it's probably mostly going to revolve around what happened after Mass Effect 3. KH with a 5 super chat. Thank you so much, K. What crossover would you like to see? IP from Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, X Studio from Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo. Something like Metroid times Naughty Dog. Ooh, this is fun. Halo times Retro Studio. And God of War X Rare. Okay, so let's do one of each. What Nintendo IP would I like to see done by a PlayStation or Xbox studio? Let's go with... Ooh, this is fun. This is fun. Let's go with... It would be fun to see... It would be fun to see a Zelda spin-off by Sony Santa Monica. That would be interesting to me. So, not a normal mainline Zelda game, maybe. But that would be fun to see because they're both got that combat third-person action. I would love to see a Zelda game with insane production values and a cinematic focus. And Sony Santa Monica are well-versed in third-person combat, well-versed in story, well-versed in pushing those graphics to the crazy limits, and maybe upping a little bit of that violence. So a Zelda spinoff by Sony Santa Monica, that would be pretty dope. So that would be my Nintendo IP to one of them. For Sony, let me think. Let's take... Ooh, this is a little tougher because Sony's games... They really do those third-person story games, and you're seeing Nintendo and Microsoft not do as much. So we would have to take the concept and really change it up, right? So let's say... You know what? This is out there. Let's take, because we don't even know if they're good yet, but let's have Initiative do a Siphon Filter game. Siphon Filter's dead and gone, and the Initiative we know is doing a spy type game. So I know that's way out there because we haven't seen what the Initiative's going to do yet. but that would be fun. Or we could even take something like a Horizon and do it with Rare. That would be pretty fun and weird because we've seen Rare do stuff like Viva Pinata. That would be kind of interesting. Let's do a Viva Pinata with Horizon robots. There you go. Let's do that's going to be my pick. Horizon Zero Dawn's robot ecology. And let's do that with Rare in a Viva Pinata-like setting. That would be fun. And then Microsoft, I would like to see Nintendo do Banjo-Kazooie. I know that sounds like blasphemy, but let's see Nintendo do a Banjo-Kazooie game. Bring Banjo back. There we go. That was all for fun. But yes, Nintendo make a Banjo game. There we go. Those would be my fun hype ones. There's a million more combos you could do, but that's just a few off the top of my head. All right, Kostas. Do you think GT7 has a chance at beating Morales, at least on PS5? Oh, this is actually interesting. It might be a racing game, but especially in Europe, it's a juggernaut. Exactly. GT5 sold over 7 million units there, and the PS3 shipped 35 million. Kostas, this is actually a fascinating question because I think GT7 is going to be big, way bigger than GT6 in sport. Ooh, that is a good question. Here's what I'll say, Kostas. I absolutely think GT7 will be bigger than Miles Morales in Europe. So if we're just going to compare that market, if we're just going to compare Europe specifically, I definitely think you see GT7 outsell Miles Morales there. In fact, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Global is an interesting one because I think GT7 will be smaller. Well, you're saying just PS5, and it looks like GT7's PS5 only, whereas Miles Morales is on PS4. So actually, I'm going to say yeah. Kostas, I'm going to say yes. Now, if we were talking Spider-Man 2, I would say no. Because Spider-Man 2, I think, is going to be PS5 only. And that's also going to be the direct follow-up to Peter Parker's story, you know, from the first Spider-Man game. So if we were just comparing Spider-Man 2 to GT7, I 100% expect Spider-Man 2 to be bigger. But if we're just comparing PS5 version of Miles Morales to GT7, yeah, GT7 probably is going to be bigger because it is only on next gen. So there's no PS4 version to take away from sales. Kind of like Miles is going to do a lot on PS4. It's also going to do a lot on PS5. And Europe is going to be probably huge for GT7. So I'm going to say yeah, Kostas. I'm going to say yep. Elias, sales. PS5 breaks PS4's record in the US. Yep, amazing. And I understand the console's manufacturing are not the greatest thing this year, but Xbox Series did worse. Oh yeah, we talked about this, Elias. All comes down to production. Microsoft clearly had to send more consoles to more markets than they did with Xbox One, and that affected their launch numbers in the US. Yep. Biothuin, Benji, do you think the game of the year to The Last of Us 2 will boost its sales? Yes, I do think so. So a lot of people watch the Game Awards. In fact, it hit 2 million concurrent on Twitch. That is freaking huge. So even if you don't really like the awards show, that's a lot of exposure. 2 million on Twitch. That's not even counting what was going on YouTube and other platforms. So I do think so, especially considering how many they won. I mean, they won 7 awards. So if you were watching that show last night, you got exposed to a lot of The Last of Us. And I would say also, especially Biothuin, if they announce a PS5 patch sometime soon, right, to make the game maybe run a little bit better, maybe look a little bit better. It already runs and looks amazing, but maybe they could boost it to native 4K on PS5. It's not native, so that's one thing you could do. Maybe potentially they could patch in 60 FPS. So I would say if that gets announced in the next couple months, plus you got that giant Game of the Year award on top of it, yep, I think so. I think you will see a boost. All right, we just had a super chat drop. I can go for about 10 or 15 more minutes, and then I got to call it a chat because I got to go to work. But we still got another 10 or 15 minutes of questions. Benji with the 5 super chat. Thank you so much, Benji. Benji, the reveals at the Game Awards were less exciting than expected. Does this mean E3 will be back big or more sparse digital events as during 2020? Benji, my hunch, and yeah, I would say the Game Awards had some good announcements. I would say the pacing was really off this year in terms of the announcements. They packed a lot of the biggest announcements early in the show, and I think that was to kind of hook people, but I think that was also kind of a mistake. I think that the Perfect Dark reveal and the Smash reveal were way too close, right? If you're going to have only a few really big announcements, because there were some, right? Perfect Dark is a very big announcement. I think the Mass Effect trailer was a good big thing, but also you had like probably your two that got the most attention were Perfect Dark and Smash, and they were very close together. So I think those probably should have had a bigger gap between them. I also was shocked there was no Zelda. That is the one that surprised me. God of War I always knew was a long shot, but it would have been nice to see. But I really thought we were going to see Zelda here, and no Zelda. So I don't actually think it means E3 is going to be back big. I hate to say it. What I do think, Benji, is this tells me there is probably a PlayStation 5 State of Play early next year. And here's why I think that. We know Ratchet & Clank is targeting launch window, right? So it's going to be coming out, I would say, no later than the end of May. If it's later than that, they are definitely pushing the terminology of launch window pretty far. If you're getting into next summer, I don't really know if you can still technically call that launch window. I mean, I guess you can, but it doesn't look like a launch window game to me. I would say May would be the furthest you can push that. So they've got that coming up pretty soon. You've got Horizon, which is targeting 2021 sometime. You got God of War that is currently announced for 2021. You got GT7 that is, reportedly sometime in the first half of next year. Sony has a lot of games they got to start talking about, right? You want to build up the hype for some of these games. And some of these games we've only seen one time. So my hunch is that we definitely probably have a big PlayStation 5 State of Play sometime early next year. I would say maybe like a February. I could see something like that. This isn't inside info. It's just looking at their release slate and looking at the amount of marketing they need to do for these games. I would say that's probably the main reason you didn't see a ton from Sony. They probably have their own State of Play sometime early next year. I would say same thing with Nintendo and same thing with Microsoft. Probably just more individual things are going to have shows, sometime early next year. Because there are some big games that still need to be talked about. And I don't think all of these people are going to wait all the way until next summer. Because some of them you can't, right? Like I said, especially Sony. Because Sony, we know, have a couple games, at least right now, in the first half of the year. Microsoft is a little more unknown, right? We know that Halo is the end of next year. So maybe Microsoft doesn't have a ton they can talk about in the first half of the year anyways. But Sony in particular, definitely, there's got to be a State of Play coming up. There has to be. Benji's Tank Top. Hey, Benji, Xbox said they have surprises in terms of exclusives for 2021. Yep. But the only ones they announced at the Game Awards were Perfect Dark, Arc 2 seem far away. What is their plan here? So one of those, Benji, I think they, I hate to say it, even though it's a game we know about, technically it wasn't dated. One of the games they were referring to was probably Flight Simulator, because we had no idea when that was coming out. They said it was going to come out for Xbox, but now we have a date. That is the summer. So Benji's Tank Top, I'm guessing that was one of the ones they were referring to. Yes, clearly Perfect Dark is very far away. Arc 2, I have no idea, but Perfect Dark, they said they're still early in development. I don't think that's coming out until 2023. I don't even think that's 2022. I think that's 2023. So, rumor is from Jeff Grubb, who is very reliable, is that Forza Horizon 5 is coming out next year. So I would say probably not a lot more than that. My guess is they were referencing Flight Simulator, Forza Horizon 5, and then maybe one more. I could also see another project in there along the size of like what Tell Me Why was. And I don't mean that exact type of game, right? It could be something that plays completely different. But that was a game that Microsoft published. That's a good, solid game. Doesn't have a giant AAA budget. I could also see another Microsoft published game coming in 2021 around that size, right? Maybe even one or two of those types of games around that tell me why type size. But I think in terms of the big AAA flagship games that are exclusives, not counting Psychonauts, because that is going to be multi-platform, those would be my guesses. Probably your big ones are Flight Simulator, Forza Horizon 5, and Halo. And maybe Starfield, but I don't know. I don't know about Starfield. Maybe 50-50 on what I think about Starfield. Dangerman1337. Hi, Benji. Q4 2021 looks very packed. Do you think any titles in that period could get pushed to 2022 due to sales performance, like potentially the next Battlefield to avoid Halo and Call of Duty? That's a great point. In terms of shooters, next holiday is going to be a bloodbath. Now, that doesn't mean that any of these games are going to underperform, but the shooter category in particular is going to be a, this is a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It sounds like a little bit of a joke, but it's going to be a war zone. Like, it is going to be a war zone. Right now, for next holiday, overall holiday, you have Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Halo. Wow. That is literally three of the biggest names in shooters all launching probably within a couple months of each other. That is going to be intense. Plus, you have to factor in that's probably when God of War is going to come out, unless it's delayed. There's no Assassin's Creed next year, so we don't have to worry about that. Assassin's Creed is on a 2-year gap cycle, right? So there's no Assassin's Creed next year. The next Assassin's Creed will be 2022. There won't be a 2021 game. I could see a very big expansion for Valhalla coming then, but not like a whole new game. That's going to be 2022. That's the way they have their studio set up for Assassin's Creed right now. Take that year break, get people excited for the next one. So there are some big games. Dangerman, I think most games in terms of competition specifically are going to be okay. Shooters are the one you worry about. Yeah, Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Halo. Woo! Will one of those get delayed? I don't think so. Call of Duty won't, because Call of Duty never does, no matter how hard the circumstances. I mean, Cold War, it sounds like, came out hot. I mean, if you look at the development timeline of that, there was some crazy stuff behind the scenes on Cold War. So, and they still made sure there was a new Call of Duty this year. So there is no way Call of Duty is moving. There's no way Halo's moving. They already delayed it a year. They're not going to delay it anymore. No way. Halo, if they're announcing holiday 2021, literally doesn't even matter what state that game's in. They already did a full year delay already. So that game is coming next holiday. It is not moving no matter what. And Battlefield, I don't think it'll move either. That's the one I would say is most possible. We have seen Battlefield launch in springtime before. So I would say in the very slim scenario that Battlefield, they feel like needs a little bit more time over at EA. Maybe they just are like, yeah, let's get the development a little bit better and also avoid Halo and Call of Duty. I would say out of those three shooters, the only one I could see getting delayed would be Battlefield. And that's because we have seen Battlefield launch in the spring before. They prefer holiday, but they have done a spring launch. Battlefield Hardline, for example, was a spring launch. So not impossible. Ronan saying, Benji, I've read that the development cost for Cyberpunk is around US dollars 135 million. Development cost was always a curiosity of mine. Do you have any other numbers of game costs? I don't have any other numbers other than CD Projekt Red has stated that the game in just pre-orders completely paid for all marketing and all development. So literally from day one, from now until the end of this game's sales, it's all profit, at least in regards to development and marketing. Now, obviously, there's going to be costs of patching this game because you got to pay people to be working to patch games. You got to pay people to do DLC, so there's going to be DLC on the way. But at least the initial cost of marketing and developing the core game, we're already in profit territory. They were already profitable the day Cyberpunk came out from just pre-orders, not even additional sales. So that's a little bit more context. No matter what, this game's going to make a lot of money. So regardless of feedback one way or another, it's going to make a lot of money. All right, I can answer only like one or two more questions. I'm going to do two more. So I'm going to pull them from people that have not gotten questions yet. One or two more. Let me look through here. I want to get someone that has not had a question answered. Parmeet Singh, Benji, the social media reaction to Perfect Dark has been kind of underwhelming in terms of likes, retweets, and views. What's your take on that? So I wouldn't say it's like doing like terrible or bombing, but yeah, it's also not like blowing up. Here's the thing, Parmeet. Perfect Dark was never a huge franchise, like at any point, any of those games. The original Perfect Dark or Perfect Dark Zero, right? Isn't that the name of the sequel? Neither one were huge. There's a really core fan base of people that loved Perfect Dark. They weren't failures, especially the original. But they also weren't like these giant selling games. So first of all, you're dealing with an IP that's not giant in the first place. Second of all, there hasn't been a new Perfect Dark in forever, since the beginning of the Xbox 360. So for your younger generation of gamers, unless they just went back and played the retro one, they don't even know Perfect Dark, right? A lot of kids that were kids and are teenagers now have never, ever played Perfect Dark, right? So you have that. It's not a huge IP. It's been a long time, so a lot of people haven't played it. And then third of all, you have an unknown studio making it, the Initiative, right? You can't slap the Naughty Dog name on there. Or if you want to use a Microsoft, version of that, you can't put now, 343 or the Coalition or someone that's like an established, people know the studio. The Initiative is a complete unknown. So those are all, I think, factors. I would say, Parmeet, it doesn't mean Perfect Dark's going to do bad by any means. It just means there's a lot of reasons behind that. It could not be a huge success, right? But I wouldn't panic about that. Those are all reasons why it's going to be not like the next God of War. You announce the next God of War, people are freaking out about the last one because it was game of the year and amazing. It's coming from Sony Santa Monica, a completely established studio. It's a game that has had recent entries, so people are familiar with it. You know what I mean? Perfect Dark just has a lot of at least initial buildup that's working against it to be a social media breakout. All right, and then we got a super chat right at the end here from Johnny Pattons with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Johnny. Do you anticipate Xbox to have a big game in early 2021? Xbox doesn't have all the time in the world to start releasing games. The bill is coming due. Johnny, I don't think they're going to have one early, but I think they're going to have one before holiday, and my guess on that in terms of big one is Forza Horizon 5. And people might be like, Forza Horizon, it's a racing game. Okay, Forza Horizon is huge. Actually, if you look at this generation, like Xbox One, Forza Horizon, you can make an argument, it was Microsoft's most successful franchise this generation, right? Like when you look overall, Forza Horizon 3 and Forza Horizon 4 were giant, both in terms of players and in terms of even sales. And that's even with things like Game Pass and stuff. There's other ones you can throw in there, right? Halo was still huge. Halo declined, but 5 and Master Chief Collection were both still huge games. You saw stuff like Sea of Thieves do very well. But overall, Forza Horizon is probably the series that came out best this generation for Microsoft. So if Forza Horizon 5 is next year, and that's going to be before holiday, my hunch would be it's a summer or maybe like a late summer, like a September-ish game. Before that would be amazing, but it could be that late. So I would say that that is probably the big one there, and that can help a lot. Forza Horizon has become very big for Microsoft. Forza Horizon has become bigger than regular Forza. So if that really is coming, very, very big. Very, very big. All right, everyone, I have to call it there. I wish I could go longer. There are tons of questions, but I have to go to work. These streams can only last so long. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you for all the questions. If I missed your questions, we do one of these every single week. So the live chat will be back next week. So you can always bring those questions forward over next week as well, because we're going to be back. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. We're getting closer to 3,000 subs. My goal was 2,500 by the end of the year, and now we're at like 2.7 almost. So we're getting close to 3K. I don't think I'm going to hit 3K during this year, but I think we can hit 3,000 subs early next year. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, everyone. Hit that like button. It helps people find my channel, helps people find these videos, and it also helps support the channel. And Benji with a $5 super chat right at the end saying, for your coffee during break at work. Thank you so much, Benji. That is incredibly kind of you. Getting in that super chat right at the end, Benji. Thanks for always being so amazing. All right, everyone, thank you for all the support this year. It's amazing. We'll be back next week. We'll have more video game stuff to talk about, and I will see you all either over on Twitter or here on YouTube in the next video. Thank you so much, everyone, and goodbye. See you. Have a good day.